and he came in with his mother, but he was dressed up as Batman. And he really thought he was Batman. He had the mask, he had the cape, and he had the utility belt, and he had his fingers on there, and he came in the room, and he backed up against the wall and was looking for any evildoers. And the mother looked up, and she kind of smiled and nodded at those of us that were sitting in there. But at 8 years old, he was pretending and keeping an eye on us, which was funny. You know, a bunch of old people sitting there, and we were going to do something violent, you know. So you can pretend to be anything you want. In fact, when I was a kid, I remember pretending to be Superman. That was the only superhero that was on television. And I was about the same age. So my neighbor friend and I, he was a year younger than me, we got towels from our mothers, just bath towels. And we hooked them with a safety pin here. And if we ran fast enough, the towel would flap, and we thought we were flying. We climbed up on about a 3-foot block wall and jumped off, and it would really flap, but just for 1 second. We never flew, but we imagined that we were that. So we weren't confused, and our mothers didn't mind. Of course, we didn't get to use a nice bath towel. I got one that had holes in it, you know. It had been well used that she let me use. But we can fool ourselves, and Satan can even enhance that and cause us to be violent if you go against that. But the Bible says he created male and female from the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being. After the war in heaven, which the Bible talks about, where Satan was cast out, when Satan said, I'll be just like God. I'm going to sit up here on the altar, and all these angels are going to be worshiping me because I'm beautiful, I'm powerful, I'm smart. And God says, no, you won't. Grabbed him and threw him down to the earth. So he's cast down to the earth. Now suddenly, here is Adam and Eve who look like God. That's what the Bible said. I mean, some people think, well, God might be one of those octopuses up there and have all these arms in order to manage all the worlds and everything going on. But no, the Bible clearly and repeatedly said he created us to look and act like himself. After the war in heaven that Satan caused, and he was cast down to earth, can you imagine the horror he felt when he found out that Adam and Eve had authority over him? So he devised a plan to deceive them, and they gave into that deception. And it's still happening today. Satan still likes to deceive people, but we have authority over him. In, let's see, where was it? Oh, it was in Nepal again. We had traveled to a desert area. It reminded me a lot of Acton. Desert and dusty and hot. Nepal Ganj, it was called. And as we weren't really witnessing to people, but we were making ourselves familiar with the area and walking through it. And every time we went down this one street, which was just a little ways from the place that we were staying, there was authority over a spirit of violence. Because there was clearly a spirit of violence on that street. Every time we went down it as Christians, the enemy whipped somebody or something up to fight. And so we started rebuking that, and suddenly, I mean, these two guys were really going at it. I mean, it looked like they both ought to be hurting each other because they were fighting and knocking each other down and jumping on each other and kicking each other. And so we're taking authority over a spirit of violence. And suddenly, the fight stopped. There's 30 men around them. These two guys get up and they kind of dust themselves off, and they didn't, shout or anything at him. They just both turned in different directions and walked off, and the crowd went, really? What? That was it? I mean, what just happened here? Culture and a different look. So, I mean, we really stand out. And the enemy was trying to frighten us away from the area. And after we took authority over that spirit of violence, there was never violence on that street again. Let's go and see. We'll pray. We're safe. And so we went down to the street of the temples as led by this guy, and he was I think he was a Buddhist himself. And so we saw the different temples, and he invited us to go in and said, no, it'll be okay, come with us. And Jack and I said, well, no, thank you. But one thing I noticed was that the people near the temples, they were making sacrifices, once again, of food. People that are been 30, and she didn't do this. I mean, she was oblivious to them. And the flies were all over these people, and I said, Jack, do you see that? And he says, yeah. He says, you see any flies? He says, you see any flies on me? And I said, no. And he was very careful. I mean, he opened the door just a crack, and he spoke to us through the door. And then finally, when we told him why we were there, he invited us in. And the didn't want to go in the guy's house. And so he had a church, and they were Saturday, and he says, we have our church services on Saturday because everybody's busy and occupied, so they don't notice when a crowd of people come to my house. And he served us tea, and then he said, my service is going on, my elder is preaching. He said, why don't you come in and share a little bit? Why don't you? So we went there, and I just said, hi, this is me, and this is why I'm here. And Jack preached a little